a lot of people giving this advice to people who are just starting out to take whatever you want to charge and like tack $60 on top of it. And I don't know why that became like a thing where people were just like I think a lot of people maybe were quote undervaluing the work that they were making. And so the advice that other like well-intending people gave to them was charge more, assume that you're undervaluing your work and just charge more for it. I think that can get you in a really sticky position where you're overcharging your work and you're not going to be able to grow an audience because maybe you have a handful of people at a craft show who are willing to spend $190 on a small bowl because you've struck up a good one-on-one relationship with them. But you have to think about how is that price going to actually translate to someone who is now sitting on the internet comparing prices. You have to first know what platform you're going to be selling on. And if you're selling in a gallery or if you're selling at craft shows where maybe your product doesn't have like a competitive product that looks almost exactly the same but costs half as much, you might have more room to charge more for it. For us, our product costs as much as it costs us to make and sell it, essentially, with a very small return on it. And that's just a complicated math equation of figuring out what our costs are and like how much does it cost to keep the lights on, how much does it cost payroll. Right now we pay about $4 million in payroll every single year. Most of the cost of our pottery is going to paychecks. If you're making work from your own home, you could potentially start thinking about how much space am I currently using in my home? And if I were to eventually move out of my home and start renting a building with comparable square footage, how much would rent cost? That's a cost that you need to consider into your product. How much are you spending on your materials? Look online, like if you're a designer and you're deciding to like make a product on yourself, like do a little searching on Glassdoor to see how much you could be getting paid a salary if you were to go and work for somebody else. Make sure that you are recording how much you should be making eventually so that you can factor in your own personal salary into your cost of goods sold. I think a lot of people start off with craft projects as a side project and maybe they have, a salary from somewhere else. And so they don't consider eventually having to pay themselves. But if you don't factor that cost in from day one, then you're going to get to a point where you're ready to launch your business and quit your day job, but you haven't budgeted a salary. So now how are you going to make income? Again, going all the way back to the visioning process, where are we now? How much is it currently costing to make the things that I'm making? And if I'm going to be, at point B in 2 years, how might my costs look different? And how do I start considering the cost of my product now so that in 2 years it's still going to make sense? That's really complicated work, and it's work that you have to do yourself, and you should not neglect it. The other stuff that you have to do is obviously just like a cohort comparison. So you have to go online, take a look at your product, see who your competitors are. I remember when we first started thinking about scaling, we made this big giant list of who we thought our competitors were. And we kind of like made all these metrics and said like, are they the quality of the product, price of the product, and market and branding and value, whatever. We made all these qualifiers and we kind of rated everybody based on our observation as a consumer and figured out where we were going to fit on this spectrum of things that we could offer our customers. And we knew that we were not going to be able to, charge someone the same for a plate as like West Elm would. So what were we going to be able to offer instead? Like where was the value going to be made up? And that really helped us figure out land on a cost of a plate that actually accounted for operating costs, but also felt feasible for a consumer with the added value of this like whole brand narrative